Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, it's a very special episode because this is one of our event preparation episodes, one of our event preparation guides. Now, these videos are very near and dear to me because I think that they're some of the most important and most interesting things for helping people progress because they're limited time things. So, let's just dive right into how I think that we should be best preparing for the Cresselia versus Darkrai event. That is coming up just in like about a week here, less than. So, yeah. In order to talk about this, I wanted to make a spreadsheet because I've seen a lot of information go about the community about managing your Cresselia down. Of how the primary goal of this event is kind of to collect this Cresselia down here that we see over here. And yes, that is a part of it. But if we really get into the nitty gritty of the event, what really are your goals? Because yes, getting Cresselia down does help for us to purchase items from the shop, but what does it matter if the items are stuff that we personally do not care about? So, I made this tool for you guys. I'm going to be putting the link in the description. You guys can click that link, make a copy of this spreadsheet, and you can do some of the math for yourself, or you won't have to do any math because the thing does all of it for you. But you select all your settings of what you think you can accomplish, and it'll tell you roughly how much Cresselia down that you need. So, I've specifically highlighted green and yellow here of just things that I personally recommend should be at like top of priority list for purpose. Green is things that I think are the first things you should buy, and then yellow are like think more about your account, and then white is like they're kind of nice, but you don't necessarily need them. Candy S and Psychic Candy are definitely up there. Dream Clusters, it depends on where you're at with your account. Pillows are really niche, but they can be nice. And then, yeah, candy. Definitely this candy purchase is more important than this candy. But basically, you just put in what your targets are. It automatically calculates out how many how much Cresselia down you'll need for that particular thing. And then over here, I have an estimate for roughly how many mains you'll be getting before taking into account your down. I keep on calling them mains because they've been called mains in the past events, but how much down you've collected, or you will have collected from the research samples. So the primary source of down is from sleep research, but there are other ways to collect it. There's event missions, which have all been posted on Rain on X. You can look them up right here. They're all right here. And then there's also, now this one's not on this section of Rain on X, but there is also there's the event tracking, the event Drowsy power, that's what I put in for EDP. 40 million and 1.7 billion, you get some down from those specific spots of the event Drowsy power. And personally, I expect myself to clear all these missions, so I just clicked all of them. But if you think that you're not going to reach Master 3 Week 2, you can deselect that box, and it automatically calculates, takes that off the overall calculation, takes off the estimated amount of down gained, then nets it in, and then tells you how much you need per night in order to reach those goals. So, that's there. Now, these last couple ones, Save Incense. This is just a selection for this box right here automatically calculates how many incense you have told it you want to purchase throughout the week. So I currently have it set that it wants to purchase 6 incense throughout the course of the week. So that's why it says 5 here, because I told it that I want to save 1 incense for after the event, because you can only save 1 incense to last after the event is over. Because the box only lets you store 1. So then this button, if you deselect it, then that's saying you don't want to save an incense. I highly recommend to save 1 incense. It's just a good idea. But if for some reason you don't care about saving that last incense, then you can click this. And what this one here calculates is the minimum amount of down that you can get from encountering a Cresselia sleep style is 32. So I was like, let's make a little bit of a lowball estimate, and it just multiplies this number by 32. I guess I could have averaged it, but that also kind of assumes that you're going to be at a high enough Drowsy power to see the 2 and 3 star styles, which isn't really guaranteed. So I was like, let's just lowball it. Better to be conservative than to be liberal in these sorts of situations. So that way you know that you're going to be actually reaching the goals if you see the numbers that you want to be seeing. Now, how did I actually figure out how much down per island? Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. Rain on X, they have a phenomenal tool. Unfortunately, it's only available to premium subscribers to Rain on X, but it can roughly make you predict how much of a certain reward you get out of the sleep research. And they recently, with their data mine, they were able to collect and gather how much down is available on every single sleep style in the game. So then they could actually use that to predict, so we can predict how much down we're roughly going to get. Now, I made this go from 0 to 7 million Drowsy power, or not Drowsy power, Snorlax strength, because I think that's a reasonable estimate for Drowsy power. Now, a couple limitations of this. I forgot about the 1.2 times multiplier to Drowsy power during the event, because if you're running Cresselia, you get a 1.2 times multiplier to Drowsy power. So that may help quite a bit, especially at the lower ends. But at the higher ends, everything kind of just plateaus, so it really doesn't matter. So I don't think that plays too much of a role. It may also matter for where you unlock things, but overall, this should look relatively... The comparison between islands should remain the same, and that's what's important. The percentage difference between the islands should be roughly the same, which you can kind of see the percentages here. After about 800,000, which actually this would probably be more like 600,000 if you get the 1.2 times multiplier for Drowsy power, then it's pretty much just steady. A steady difference for all the islands, for which ones are good and which ones are bad. But I put bad in quotation marks, and we'll get to that soon. So, how much does each island produce in terms of down? Well, if you're at a lower amount, it obviously produces less. But you can see that they all, like I said, kind of plateau, starting around 1 million Drowsy power and going on. They got a little bit better, but the difference is so minuscule that it's not really that much of a concern. So, you don't really have to push all that much Drowsy or Snorlax strength, because the differences that you'll see are pretty minimal. I mean, I guess there's a pretty big difference between 54 and 67 if you're at the Old Gold power plant, but Old Gold's kind of an exception because it has such a high curve for and higher potential for the rarity of styles that you can encounter. Most other ones you're seeing like a lower variance. Like here you're seeing a difference of like 8 or 9. No, like 8 extra mains per night between 1 million and 4.2 million. So realistically, Drowsy power, I mean, you want to do well, primarily for the event Drowsy power, but you don't necessarily need it for the Cresselia down, especially since it only applies to the first one per night. Now, these numbers, I also wanted to compare what is the maximum value at a particular Drowsy power, subtracting the minimum value. So what's the widest range and the biggest difference between main output or down output that you can get for any particular Snorlax strength? And the highest that we're really seeing here is like 11 or 12, which is, that's not good. That's not a good amount of difference, because over the course of 14 days, that is well over 140 down that is lost. But realistically, you're not hanging out at 7 million Snorlax strength the whole week. You're going to be at these earlier ones, at least for part of the week. And then also, there's a lot of RNG that comes into play at this as well. And also, the other limitation of this experiment is if I go into the Pokemon Sniper and I tell it to target Cresselia, you can see that it actually doesn't account. It says there's a 0% chance to encounter Cresselia right now. That's because there's not enough data to really know what its rarity should be. So the calculator actually assumes, even though you tell it that Cresselia is boosted, it assumes no Cresselia spawns. Well, theoretically, an island that has less psychic types should spawn more Cresselias, or should have a higher chance to spawn Cresselias over other islands. So realistically, the islands that are doing worst here, like Cyan Beach has only Mr. Mimes boosted during this event, aside from Cresselia itself. So theoretically, Cyan would do better comparatively than, say, Lapis comparative to the rest of the things, because it could theoretically spawn more Cresselia. But that is kind of putting all your eggs in one legendary duck basket, because It's rare. You're probably not going to encounter it. I will say from personal experience, as someone who's went through 3 legendary events and hit Master 20 for 2 of them and Master 19 for the 3rd, I only encountered 1 wild legendary out of all 3 of those events while they were boosted. Now, this is the only opportunity to have them boosted, but if you see them wildly, then that is a tremendous... That's an extra 32, at a minimum, an extra 32 downs that you weren't deserving of. That comes in anyway. It's a big gamble, but it is something to note that theoretically these islands should perform better if you account for Cresselia spawns as well, on average. Additionally, another limitation of this, it doesn't assume good camp ticket. If you're using a good camp ticket, you get 1 extra spawn. It also doesn't account for if you're using Incense, which Incense gives you an extra spawn. I did make it account for Cresselia Incense, which is what this whole setting is, because that's a pretty significant amount of down that you'll be getting from Cresselia Incense, but it doesn't account for other kinds of incense that you could be running every night of the week. So there are limitations here, but I think it's a pretty nice little tool for figuring out roughly how much down is needed from every night of research on average. Now, what is the point of this to say? And that is really a question, how much down do you need? Is it worth it to go to Lapis? Because a lot of people say, go to Lapis, go to Lapis. It's the best place because Psychic spawns are boosted. Psychic spawns boosted, it has more Psychic types, that's more down means more success. But there's other goals here. There's other goals here like the event Drowsy power. You want to do well, you want to succeed in the event Drowsy power, and you might have island boosts somewhere else. Let's say you're a fairly new player and you only have a 75, or your highest island boost is only at Greengrass. It's probably more worthwhile for you to go to Greengrass, especially if your Lapis percent is only 5% or 0%, because that's very, very difficult to then get far enough to actually see the gain in down. And additionally, you'll get far further at Greengrass in seeing more spawns, in getting the event Drowsy power for the rank rewards, and you'll get a lot further for some of these missions, like, can you reach Master 3 at Lapis Week 2 with your account? There's things to question here. What is achievable for your account? And then, maybe be willing to take a sacrifice on the down. And for that comparison, I just wanted to see, if we made a relatively highball estimate of roughly how many down you'll be losing every single night, even if you compare, like, the worst island to the best island, Greengrass to Lapis, if we account for only Drowsy powers past 1 million, because realistically that's where they all kind of stabilize off. Before that point, it's so random that they're basically all the same, because there's just too much variability. Aside from Old Gold Power Plant, if you're not doing well, if you're that early game, you're probably not going to Old Gold Power Plant yet anyway, because you probably don't have it unlocked. But if you're early game, don't go to Old Gold. It takes too much Drowsy power to even encounter 8 spawns there. That's the problems that's running into. But across the other islands, there's so much variability and so many factors that go into play that I wouldn't even consider there to be a difference between the amount of down that you would get between the islands. It's just all relatively pretty random in which one performs the best. And this chart is percentage of max lost. So you can see after a certain point, Lapis is just always the best. So it's 0% because it's 0% off the max because it is the max. Meanwhile, Greengrass is like 15% worse than Lapis. That's what this chart is showing. So you can see that Greengrass is pretty consistently the worst comparatively. And after 1 million, it averages out to about these percentages per day lost by going to that island instead of Lapis. And even if you go to the worst possible island of Greengrass, you're losing 140 down. That sounds like a lot. But realistically, because of the way the devs designed the shop, everyone should be able to buy the cheapest incenses. Everybody should be able to buy the skill seed and should be able to buy the cheapest incenses down here and the cheapest of biscuits, most likely. Especially if you count for friend drops per day. Also, little asterisks about this. I put in 25 because that's kind of what we've seen from past events as, once again, a lowball estimate. I know that this averaged about 25 for the dream coins from the anniversary event, but both the other legendary events we've had averaged anywhere from like 27 to 32 from past data that I've seen. So I was like, I'm just going to use the lowest estimate from all those of 25. So you can modify this to be your own estimate. When they find out more data about what the drop rates are from friends, then you can change this. If you have lower level friend levels, you might want to change this down to like 5. If you only have like level 1, level 2 friends, then that changes things pretty heavily. You'll need more stuff because an extra 25 down per day is actually quite huge across 14 days. So, but yeah, ultimately, because you can probably afford the cheapest stuff, the only stuff that you're missing out on is the more expensive stuff if you don't gain as much down as somebody else. So, the real question is, does it make a difference? Because 140 down of difference is only the difference of purchasing like one Cresselia biscuit. A little bit more than one Cresselia biscuit. Maybe you'll be shorting yourself a Cresselia biscuit and 2 Handy Candy S. There's so many other things going on in this event. Use it to push your ranks. Use it to meet new goals. Use it to catch what you want to catch and encounter what you want to encounter. That is my take on it. Do well for the event Drowsy Power. I think there's going to be more interesting rewards when we get to the second half. Because as of right now, the only event Drowsy Power rewards that were able to be data mined were the first, like, half of them. We know there's going to be more rewards the second week that we didn't see yet. So, potential Darkrai. We don't know, but theoretically, why would they be hiding that from us unless it's got something more interesting? And my theory to that is Darkrai. So, that's where we're going to potentially see other stuff. I'd say try to hold out and do best week 2. But overall, it won't be bad to do bad. If you want to go for the most amount of down possible, Lapis is technically the best after about 800,000 Drowsy Power. It's technically the best consistently after that point for down output. Old Gold Power Plant does pretty well comparatively. Top also, but personally, I think Cyan is also a reasonable choice. It does worse comparatively here, but once again, I think we're all going to be sitting fine for down. I don't think there's going to be that much of a problem with buying and reaching the goals that we have in catching Cresselia. That I don't think down is really going to be that big of a deal, ultimately. I think the bigger deal is going to be the event Drowsy Power, and Cyan, theoretically, has the highest chance to spawn Cresselia, just because it has the least amount of psychic types that are boosted during the event, which means there's less Pokemon boosted to potentially take up Cresselia spawns. Granted, I think the odds are probably like a difference of like odds of being like 4% over the course of the week to instead being 5%. Like, I think it's a very small change in odds. So I wouldn't be banking your entire decision on wild Cresselias. I'm not promising you wild Cresselias, but it's theoretically got the best odds if you go to Cyan. The only ones that I suggest to stay away from, if you're not new, don't go to Greengrass. There's really no way to potentially hunt things there because there's just too much water down pool. It's the same thing that we can say about every event at Greengrass. But if you're new, Greengrass is a phenomenal option. And if that's where you're going to excel for event Drowsy Power, absolutely go there. If you're new, go to Greengrass. But if you're not, stay away from it. And if you don't want a Wobbuffet, don't go to Snowdrop. Wobbuffet only spawns, is like the only boosted spawn at Snowdrop, so that's why I wouldn't suggest going there. I also probably wouldn't suggest Top, just because of the Pokemon that are there. Once again, even though it does do a little bit better than Cyan for down output, there's really no reason to go to Top that you wouldn't choose Lapis for instead, because it's got Espeon and Wobbuffet and why not. So, once again, you'd have Wobbuffets boosted. Do you really want Wobbuffet? You also have Espeon boosted, but Espeon you should probably be catching as an Eevee if you want to use it. So, or if you want to use it long term. I guess if you want to use it for this event, you got to catch it as an Espeon, because at this point, you're not going to be able to evolve it with the sleep hour requirement. But still, all those things spawn at Lapis and more, so you get more down. So, like, I don't suggest Top either. I think the most valid choices are if you still want to hunt a Musharna because you think it's interesting and you want what a Musharna can offer, or you want to hunt a Mr. Mime as well, then Old Gold and Cyan are decent options. And also, if you think you're like me, and I think I'm going to be fine for down, which is why I personally don't care how much down, even if it is a little bit less, even if I'll get 92 less down over the course of the week projected, I don't really care about that. That's not very much. Then I think Cyan's a reasonable option. I think some players are writing this off too quickly. I think it's interesting. And then obviously Lapis is the gimme, obviously best choice. But that's my personal recommendations. And I'll leave this down calculator down in the description for all of you to use in the future. So yeah, if you have enjoyed the video and learned a little something about potential strategy for the Cresselia week, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I try to post videos like this whenever there's something coming out. I like to talk about the best way to strategize for these sorts of events. So yeah, as always, I thank you guys for watching and hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.